Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Inaugural Irish Sports Awards. As a sports fan, and not a sports star, it's a real honour to be amongst such sporting talent from past and present. It's people like you who bring so much enjoyment, so much excitement and pride to us all, and tonight we look forward to recognising your achievements in sport. And our first award tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is the Breakthrough of the Year. This award is sponsored by Dacia, so will you please welcome to the stage Mr. Paddy McGee. The Breakthrough of the Year is awarded to a sportsperson for their significant success in their field in the past 12 months. The nominees are Bertram Allen, international show jumper; Conor McGregor, UFC featherweight title contender; Robbie Henshaw, Connacht and Ireland centre; Stephanie Meadow, professional golfer; Stephanie Roach, professional footballer; and the Irish women's rugby team. The winner of the Irish Sports Award for Breakthrough of the Year is Stephanie Roach.
Hit me with your best shot. Why don't you hit me with your best shot? Hit me with your best shot.
Congratulations, Stephanie.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting to win it, to be honest, to be in such the category with the people that I was in. I really wasn't expecting to win it.
It's a fine trophy, isn't it?
Quite heavy, actually.
It is
Can I put it down for a second?
You may put it down. Here, I'll put it down for you. You want to hold it? All right, we'll put that down. I guess this caps off an incredible year for you. 2014 was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's been obviously a great year. I think everybody's been brilliant. I think it's been out there with the Puskas Award. It was hard not to be there with the support that I got from everybody all over the country, but it's just been crazy. It's been great, and I've tried to take it in my stride as best as I could, but it has been a bit of a strange year.
It all started in the game for Peamount United, with that wonder strike, and thankfully somebody there had the presence of mind to video this on their phone, otherwise we mightn't be standing here. From there, that's when the ball started to roll and it really started to take off. You were longlisted for the Pushcas Awards and then very suddenly shortlisted with the help of the whole country who really got behind you. That must have given you great pride that everyone came out to support you.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously when I first got announced that I was in the top 10, it was just unbelievable. I was like, wow, I've kind of forgotten about the goal, if that makes sense, but it was unbelievable, and I said all along that I'd love to just get to the top 3, but then the support, as you said, that I got from everyone all over Ireland, it made me think that I actually had a chance of going and winning it, and it was unbelievable. As I said, the support was brilliant from everybody, and it was a great year, and unfortunately I didn't win it, but at least I won tonight.
Indeed you did. You beat Robin Van Persie in that top 3. The overall winner, James Rodriguez, I mean, both himself and Van Persie, their goals were from the World Cup. So to even beat one of those, to come second. When you arrived in Zurich, did you have an expectation that you could go on and win it?
As I said before, I think when the top 10 first came out, I thought to myself, I just want to get to the top 3 and be able to go to the awards, because only the top 3 get to go. And I think the closer it got to the actual date of the awards, I thought the support that I was getting from everybody all over Ireland, including Paul McGrath, who's here. He done loads on Twitter as well, so thanks, Paul. There were so many people all over Ireland just kind of tweeting about it. The Steph for Puskas hashtag thing was going on Twitter and stuff, so it was amazing. And then I think, as I said, with that all happening, I kind of had myself thinking that I had a chance of winning it. So it was just an unbelievable journey for myself and my family to be able to go over and do all that. And as I said, to get the support from everybody in Ireland was fantastic. And
it's a journey that's not over. It's very much just starting, because since then you've been offered a contract with the Houston Dash in Texas.
Yeah.
That's where you're headed to next. Before you head there, though, what are you doing on Paddy's Day?
Yeah, I just got word last night, actually late last night, that I've been invited to the White House for St. Patrick's Day, which is unbelievable.
Do you have any tickets to give away tonight for that?
No, my dad and my brother or my boyfriend are down there, and they're the ones who want to come, and I can only bring myself. Like, they're only inviting me on my own, which is, as I said, on something I can't turn down. And I think people are probably going, geez, she scored 1 goal and she's going to the White House. It's unbelievable. But as I said, it's a great honour, and I'm really looking forward to the day. All
right, so you're going to the White House on your own, but your boyfriend Dean Zambra, who I know plays with Bray, he's going to America with you.
Yeah, he is. He's coming to America. He's coming to Houston, and he's obviously playing football a long time too, but he's coming over on a holiday visa, and with the hope of maybe getting the club and being able to come back over then after 3 months. But it's great to be able to go over together, and I think it's a great opportunity for us both. It's something that I'd never turn down. Obviously, it's a life-changing opportunity, and hopefully it all works out now.
And finally, in women's football, and indeed in sport in general, kids now have a role model to look up to, and that's you. Does that sit comfortably with you, that you're now an icon in the women's game?
Yeah, it's a strange one, I think, because I think all along that people have been saying it to me, and I've met young kids who come up to me and telling me how amazing I am, but it's just strange, as I said, because everything's happened so fast. But I'm happy to be a role model for women or for young girls if it works. I think it's getting a lot of girls involved in football and involved in sports, which is something that's needed, I suppose, in Ireland. I think you've seen it the same when Katie Taylor done so well. All the girls are joining boxing and trying to get started in that. So hopefully now it will see a surge in girls that want to try play football.
Okay, well, congratulations on the year you've had. Congratulations on the award tonight. Good luck in America. Say hello to Barack for us.
I will, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, our breakthrough winner of the year, Miss Stephanie Roach. We'll continue with tonight's Irish Sports Awards by honouring the men and women who down through the years have brought us so much joy and success in their sport. It's time to meet the legends of Irish sport, and to present our very first award, will you please welcome Ronan Foley from IPB, 2 members of the Italia 90 team, Mr. Paul McGrath and David O'Leary. But to go back to the start, when we qualified for the World Cup, we certainly had no idea what to expect. Did you?
Not a clue. Not a clue, because we'd just come back from the Euro 88s were the last ones we qualified, but this was actually the World Cup, and it was a massive event, and the way it went was just superb for us, really, to be honest. And then this fella does the ridiculous, and scores a penalty, and we're on our way to Rome.
We'll talk about the penalty. So, David, you had a difficult enough time under Jack Charlton, yet you were in Italy and called upon in extra time of the game with Romania to come on and do a job. Did you know coming on that penalties were going to be the likely outcome? Was it going that way?
Look, it was a tight game, and who knows what was going to happen on it. But getting to the penalties, I actually went round when it finished. Jack let us get on with it because he was that easygoing man and said, "You go and handle it." And I kind of went round and I said to the lads, "What number do you want to take?" And I was going to take any. I was left with the 5th one, and it turned out to be, say, maybe the glory one. But the other 4 lads have been the front, just to contribute as much. So I accepted on their behalf as well. And as I say, it's a pleasure to meet. I haven't seen the great man for many years.
Oh, nice.
We're talking about a great player, but he was a great player, believe you me.
And likewise. Nice.
And I have to say, I've got a great friend over here, apart from my wife, and one of the kids here is the daughter, John Mahoney, and he's experienced the things that I've lived on from that penalty. Even yesterday, getting off the plane, a man came up to me and said, "Great penalty, knew you wouldn't miss."
Well,
And, I have a daughter, she's 28 now, and my wife stepped out of the garden in London, not thinking this idiot would be taking a penalty, but thinking, I don't want to watch those poor lads taking penalties. And the kids, the daughter being a young girl there, my son, that ran out and said, "Daddy scored." And my wife came back in and went, "Don't be so stupid." And, they see this.
Which daddy?
Come on, Paul.
He was such a great player, isn't he? But
You give it, you take it away.
They couldn't believe it. And you told me something there. I mean, I left at 15. I'm coming up to 57 in May. I'm nearly 42 years away from my home country here, home country in Dublin. And for a lad from Dublin to score that, but for all the 42 years nearly I've been away, flown in and out of Dublin, that day coming back, I just never thought, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, you'd swear we'd won it.
We circled the field, and I remember him actually because he hates flying. And the pilot's kind of doing circles around the place, and he's going, "When are we going to land?"
Because they brought you to show you the crowds,
just
didn't they?
yeah.
In the plane, yeah.
And the thing to probably finish off was I had a granny that I loved her very much, lived in Capel Street, and she was in Kappa Hospital at the time. And she was telling the nurses there after I was going, "That's my grandson." And I think the nurses thought, "That old dear, just lost." And I remember after we got through Dublin and everything, I was going up to see her, and I walked in, and I couldn't believe it. And it was the nurses, and they kind of said to themselves, "The old dear wasn't that mad."
Yeah, it was really you.
And that. But I've never seen anything like it landing in Dublin, and the journey from the airport into town was just something that'll live with us forever.
And tell me I'm wildly wrong in saying this. Had you ever taken a penalty before?
I always wanted to take one, but I played with... But I'm going to give you another story then, but I always wanted to take one, but I played with so many great players that I was afraid to put my hand up.
Yeah.
There was that many great players. But probably to finishing off that, my mum told me the story that when they were living in Glasnevin, that when I was going up for the penalty, my dad was in Hillcrest, and he got from his settee down onto the floor, started praying, and that way, and praying, and thank God I hit the net. But I do appreciate it after all the years now, because anywhere I go, it's amazing the people come up, even up to yesterday. And I now realise, thank God I did score the penalty.
Absolutely.
Honestly, thank God I did score.
Well, it changed your life, and it indeed changed all ours, and including my own, because you weren't the only person to score that day. I got my first kiss off a girl, aged 11, up the road. It was horrible, but I got a kiss because of you, so thank you very much. Before we finish, Paul, what's your overriding, abiding memories of it? Because we did go on to play Italy. You had a fabulous performance in that game. Not the last time you performed incredible against Italy. What's your overall memories of the tournament?
The only sad thing for me was that I thought we went into the Italian game thinking that it was our final. That was the only sad part that I had. That I don't think too many of us believed that we could actually put it up to them and maybe even beat them. But Mr. Sclatchy soon proved me wrong, and he got a great goal. And on the markings of the game, I suppose they could have beaten us by another goal or two. But we gave a good account of ourselves, and I think we made Ireland proud anyway.
You certainly did that, and a whole lot more. On behalf of everyone here, Paul, David, thank you for the memories. Our next Legends Award is for a former light welterweight, boxer from Lowell, Massachusetts in the US of A. He is regarded as a working-class hero, a blue-collar athlete who overcame many difficulties in life and prevailed through determination and sheer hard work. In a career spanning 51 professional fights, which highlights include winning the WBU world title, he is best remembered for his trilogy of fights with Hall of Famer Arturo Gatti. These 3 fights were the most brutal yet beautiful toe-to-toe demonstrations of courage, sacrifice, and combat. In the catalogue of famous boxing trilogies, this ranks as one of the all-time greats, with their first fight being described as the fight of the century, 2 of the fights being voted Fight of the Year by the Ring magazine, and round 9 of their first fight being rightfully considered the greatest round of boxing ever. Mark Wahlberg portrayed him in the movie The Fighter, but I'm delighted to welcome here tonight the real fighter, Irish Mickey Ward. Irish Mickey Ward, I guess the obvious question to start with is, where does the Irish come from?
I know it, huh? My mother and father both have family over here. They're in Clare and Cork, so that's where it comes from. It's like a 4th generation, I guess, or so.
Okay. Well, it was a name that worked well with you. It was very popular with the Irish in America.
Right, exactly. I had so many different names when I first started boxing. I had like the babyface killer because I was 19 when I turned pro, and I probably looked 13. Now I look a lot older than that, obviously. But when I was young, I looked younger than I was, and they gave me that name, then they gave me something else, and then finally Irish stuck.
Yeah. Well, you still look ridiculously young, by the way. I won't say what age you are now. But you were about 36, I think, going into the fights with Gatti. People can do the maths. Up until that point, I mean, as I mentioned, people will remember the trilogy of fights. These were the last 3 fights of your career. So where was your career at just before you agreed to fight Gatti the first time?
Well, I just fought Jesse James Lehauer on HBO, and they said I gave him a headbutt, and they stopped the fight, and he was ahead. I was never ahead after 3 rounds of any fight, so they gave it to him, and then by doing that, they gave me the fight with Gatti, which on kind of like a we'll give you something back, you know what I mean, HBO. So they gave me that fight with Gatti, thinking, of course, he's gonna beat me, but I turned things around. I beat him, and that's what I was always supposed to get beaten. I was always the underdog.
And that was the story of your life, really, wasn't it, up until that point?
Yeah, basically. I had a lot of tough fights. I had a lot of good fights. But, I was always the underdog. And, going with Gatti, I was the underdog. Going almost all the big fights, I was underdog. So, it was good to win that big one with Gatti, the first one. Plus, I beat Shane Neary in London for the
Which
WBU
we've seen
title.
there, yeah.
Right, and I was the underdog against him, too. But I'm not a cocky person at all. But I had something in my mind. I knew I was going to beat him. And I wasn't worried about him. I fought a lot. I thought better fighters at that point than he did.
The fights with Gatti are legendary for the brutality, the effort, the heart, the courage. But I think ultimately because of what subsequently happened afterwards was that your friendship developed Not just a passing friendship, you became best mates. I know in the past you've described it as soulmates.
Yeah, we became friends. I mean, we weren't friends before the fights. I didn't know him and things like that. But after the fights, like we had fought like 2 times. Never talked to him. After the 3rd fight, still didn't talk to him. But then they called me to train or walk him into the ring all the time. And we had mutual respect for each other because, you know, he gave it his all, I gave my all. And so there was like, I always respect everybody I fought. I never disrespected someone because if you have enough, excuse my language, but balls to get in there, walk up those 3 steps, then you earn my respect. So we always have, like, I always respected him. But after the 3rd fight, we just became, you know, the funny thing is I tell the story is like, when I really respected him the most was we both went to the hospital after the fight. He went in one ambulance, I went in the other ambulance.
And this was a regular thing after your fights with him, going to the hospital?
Yeah. So I go in one ambulance, he goes the other. So I'm getting stitched up. And my doctor says, I got someone wants to say hi to you. So he turns the curtain over, and there's Gaddy. He's getting stitched up. He goes, and the first thing he said to me, he goes, Mick, you okay? And that hit me like, you know, I still get goosebumps. Because it wasn't like he was cocky. Like, he really cared about how I was and how I felt. And that's what really gave us the friendship that we had until he passed.
That scene of you and him in the hospital is straight out of a Rocky film. The whole story, I guess.
It was nuts.
You mentioned there he passed away in tragic circumstances and indeed suspicious circumstances in 2009. How much do you miss him?
I honestly, I miss him a lot. I think about him almost every day. At some point, maybe, you know. But he was a great kid. You know, he lived kind of a crazy life, but he is just getting into himself. He was just trying to, settle down into a man and family and stuff like that. And to get his life taken tragically like that, it hurts. It's just a shame.
Another man.
Because me and him could have been growing old together, telling a war story.
Yeah.
They knocked me down, knocked you down. All that bullshit.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, the fights were that good and incredible. Most people actually don't remember, and I think it's a testament to how good the fights were. Most people don't remember actually who won or lost. It nearly, to the fans of boxing, it wasn't even about that.
No, right. And a lot of people say that, but I know who lost. I lost twice.
You won one.
I won one. The most important one, I won.
Yeah.
The first one. And the funny story is, I won the first one, and I got offers from different things or whatever. And then I got I knew fighting him would be maybe not as much money as fighting for a title or something, but just knowing how the fight would be, and so I gave Toro the fight, and he beat me the second one. And he had a big fight with someone else, I can't think of not Costa Zoo, but someone else, and for a lot of money. But he gave me, because I gave him the second one, he gave me the third one, and then that just shows.
That was the honor amongst you.
Yeah, you know what I mean, yeah.
Another man who's entwined in your story, and for a longer period than Arturo, was your brother Dickie. Dickie Eklund, ladies and gentlemen, you would have seen portrayed so brilliantly by Christian Bale in the movie The Fighter.
Right.
He was very much the guy that got you into boxing, and I must ask today, how is he?
He's doing okay.
Yeah?
He's all right.
That's good to hear.
He's all right. Yeah, he's
good
doing
to
all
hear.
right. Yeah. Any wood around here? He's doing okay, but like he did. He started me out when I was 7 years old, my first fight, and I like football. I'd say football. That's football.
American
football.
Yeah.
I like football, baseball better than boxing when I was younger. And I thought I was better at that than I was boxing at the beginning. But then boxing became my sport. But Dickie he was more of a boxer. He always took me down to the gym, and I looked up to him. But then he got in his own troubles. That demons killed him, and the drugs. And if you've seen the movie The Fighter, what he went through and stuff, and it's a struggle every day.
Okay. Speaking of the movie, because the film ends when you beat Shane Erie in London for the WBU title,
right.
That leaves it open to make the film about the trilogy of fights with Arturo Gatti. Is that going to happen?
Well, Mark wants to do it, but shit, Mark's got to hurry up and do it because you can't look like one age here and one age, you can't look like 33 or 4 here and 44 here, or be heavy hair or big belly here, and so he's got to get his ass going if he's going to do it.
Well, perhaps you could come back and reprise the role, real life. No, been there, done that.
No, I've done it.
Mickey, it's a true honor to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming over to be here.
I want to thank everyone that brought me down here from the Irish Sports, bring me over from Boston. I got my wife here, my daughter. I got Steve here. We got my little leprechaun.
That's Tommy.
Tommy, yeah.
Tommy the leprechaun.
I got him. So, guys, thank you for showing me around here, and it's been great. It's really good. Ireland has really opened their arms to me, and I love it here.
And we'll come back soon.
Thank you
Ladies
so
and
much.
gentlemen, our international legend, Irish, Mickey Ward. Our next award this evening is sponsored by Friends First. Here to present this award, we have JP Hughes from Friends First. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome so many members of the 1985 Triple Crown team who are here tonight. Hugo McNeil, Michael Kiernan, Trevor Ringland, Nigel Carr, Brendan Mullen, Philip Matthews, Keith Crossan, Paul Dean, and Donald Lenihan. Gentlemen, congratulations. 30 years on, it's great to see you all together. I'm wondering, do you get to do this often, to get together and relive the old days?
Not really. And thankfully, after seeing the clips here of back in the day, it looks nothing like what you're going to see tomorrow.
Sure.
But it's great to get out. I don't see these guys that often, but when we do see each other, it's just like being back to when we were in the day.
All right, well, take us back to that day. As I said, 30th of March, Triple Crown and Championship at stake. England arriving to town with their own designs on it. Firstly, the weather that day. The weather was poor, wasn't it? And that was not to be in our favour.
Well, yeah, we all remember it. We had been playing pretty good running rugby up to that, and that particular day, as you said, was pretty rainy, windy. So it sort of changed the game a small bit for us. But it was a wonderful memory, and in fact, Tony Ward was just saying earlier about how the game has developed into tight sort of arm wrestles, and it's going to be the same tomorrow. That game, actually, people forget in the euphoric moment of winning it, was a pretty tight arm wrestle of a game as well. But we had been playing pretty good running rugby up to that and got slightly crimped in the game. I was obviously delighted because I got my first score. Mick Kiernan obviously won the game for us. But as we go through life, myself and Trevor Ringland sort of have a revisionist theory about it. There's a lovely 3-on-2 overlap. And we're sort of still trying to figure out why he didn't pass it. Now, I can understand why he didn't pass it to me. But Trevor had been scoring, I think 2 or 3 of the games. He hadn't scored for Ireland, I think, for about 2 or 3 seasons before that. So, but the minute Mick got it, what people forgot was he was such a consummate footballer. I knew the minute he hit it that it would go through, and obviously the game was ours.
Yeah, I remember Michael. He looked out at me. I would a clear run in. All I had to do was pass it to him, and he looked at me, shook his head. No chance, boy. But I was actually looking at the success that we had in 1985 and reflecting back on it, and we scored some fantastic tries that year, and it really was a team full of running, and we really did produce the goods. And I'd just like to say that one of the reason why we won the Triple Crown was actually Michael Kiernan, and the kicks that he put in all the matches. Without him, we actually wouldn't have won the Triple Crown, and he became one of Ireland's greatest all-time kickers and point scorers. But the true story about where that came from was a match way back in September in 1984, and we were playing a charity match down in Cork, and we had all of us, this young team that was coming through, and we looked at each other in the changing rooms before we went out to play the match, and we said, right, who's going to take the kicks? And we all looked around. There was no natural kicker amongst us, and Michael just said, well, look, I'll take them and we'll see how I get on. If it doesn't work, then we'll give it to somebody else. And that was actually where Michael then took on the responsibility. He succeeded in that match. We actually scored 90 points in the game, and if it hadn't been for that match and for him saying that just before we went out to play in that game, then he wouldn't have become the kicker for that team, and we probably wouldn't have had the success that we had. So it's a tremendous tribute to him, I think, that the team actually ended up successful as it was, as well as the game, the style we played in. But without those kicks going over, we wouldn't have won the Triple Crown.
Well, thanks a million, Trevor. If I had my time over again, I'd have definitely given the pass after hearing that. Sorry about that.
Well, Donald, sorry, continue please, Michael.
No, but actually, like, I shouldn't have been in the position that I was in for the drop goal, because my good friend Paul Dean was number 10 at the time, and I was standing in the 10 slot,
Yeah.
but as it turned out, he had gone down the blind side. And as the ball came to me, I took one look at Dino, and I could see the look of horror on his face in case it went over. And it did go over. But I haven't seen him for 30 years because he went hiding, but it's great to see him again now after all these
So this all wasn't off the training park, because Donald, to me, it was quite a Munster-esque move. You were involved in it. It looked like it was all being set up for the drop goal.
Yeah, I mean, we've never mentioned the fact that it was 3 Spillane from Munster to Bradley from Munster to Kiernan to Lenihan from Munster to Kiernan. Well, I suppose, look, it should come as no surprise to anybody here that the foundation for that win was in Cork. You know, so after listening to Mick O'Dwyer going on about Kerry there, I had to get something for the poor old misfortunate Cork people. But, you know, Trevor mentioned that day in Cork. I think to be remiss of us not to mention Mick Doyle, who's no longer with us. I had been part of the Irish team, a number of us, for 3 years before that. So we were a very young side, and you know it was alien for an Irish team, for the philosophy to run the ball. It was a famous banner. We were supposed to play England actually in the first game. That game, it was called off because of snow. The championship was about 3 or 4 weeks earlier than it is played now, so the game was cancelled. And for the first game, a lot of people would know Will Greenwood from Sky Sports. His father, Dick Greenwood, was actually the coach of England at the time. And Mick Doyle had been exposing this running rugby. Ireland were going to play running rugby. And Greenwood had come out and said, I mean, Ireland as a nation will want to get a brain transplant to play running rugby. Of course, by the time the England game was eventually played, we'd scored all those tries. So it kind of backfired on him. But it was a special team. I think we were a young side. A lot of us had played in the Irish universities together. We'd grown up together. But I think one of the special moments was in Wales. Ireland hadn't beaten Wales in Cardiff since 1967. I had played there in '83 with a lot of fantastic team. Guys like Moskeen, Willie Duggan, Fergus Slattery, John O'Driscoll, Ali Campbell, they were all on that side. And none of those players had ever won in Cardiff. They'd come through the great Welsh teams of the 70s. And in those days, it isn't like now. I mean, unfortunately, you go to the Aviva tomorrow, the teams will come out 7 minutes before the start. There's nobody in the stand because they're all in the bars and the commercial areas and all of that. But in those days, it was 69,000 people in the old Cardiff Arms Park. They were all in situ an hour before the match. So you're down in the bowls of the dressing room and they're singing all the hymns and arias. And, you know, and I'll always remember because we had a load of new young caps that season. And we were sitting in the dressing rooms in Cardiff. We were listening to all the Welsh hymns and you could see it was either going to intimidate or inspire. And I think one of the players stood up and we thought this was fantastic, all this singing. And we decided impromptu for the singing of the Welsh national anthem that we'd stand and we'd link arms. And, you know, this was never done before. And, you know, it was like 15 people against the world. You saw the results, some fantastic tries. I mean, there were forwards on the team as well. There's all these backs think they won this thing on their own, you know. But I think that was one of the great days, coming back for the England match, as you mentioned, the weather. But I think the fact that the game was cancelled the first day had a huge bearing as well, because we had assembled on the Thursday. We woke up Friday morning, snow everywhere. We were told the game was cancelled. So it's 12 o'clock on a Friday. We're not due home till Sunday. So what are we going to do? So we looked out the window. We could just about make it up to O'Donoghue's pub in the corner. So we went in there at 12 o'clock. And we didn't leave till 7. So let's say whatever
on
about
Sunday or
no, not on the Sunday, on the Friday. So whatever about Ringland, that is place kicking in Cork, the real foundation for winning the Triple Crown. There's 5 hours in O'Donoghue's bar.
Well, there you go.
It was great.
That's fantastic. And very finally, the significance of a Triple Crown back then. I mean, nowadays the players, you know, it's not such a big deal. But the Triple Crown back then, and indeed the championship, was so big.
Well, it was really the championship because, you know, a Triple Crown without a championship doesn't really mean anything because you could win a Triple Crown today now and you could come third in the championship. You could actually, back then, you could win the Triple Crown but not win the championship.
Is it true there was no actual trophy either for the Triple Crown back then?
No, it wasn't. So it was you know, because if France won all 4 games, you could win the Triple Crown and come second. And so I think it was good. But I think what Donald said, it was what was exciting, and I would like to pay tribute to Mick Doyle because, like, back then, it was a very grey time in Ireland. '85, it was 20% unemployment. It was really grim mass emigration. It was, you know, and for a guy to come out and say, as Mick Doyle said, you guys can be the best in Europe. You guys can play a style of rugby that no one's played for a while. I think we all wanted to believe it, but you know, I think his great ability was that he gave us the belief, and it was fantastic because the whole country sort of came behind it. And you saw Michael's sort of drop goal when, as Trevor said, he did ignore all of us outside him. But I've never heard, from the last couple of minutes, because we nearly blew it. We nearly blew it in the last game, as the guys have said. I mean, we were so much, England were hopeless at that time. But because we probably got carried away. And if Rob Andrew had, their out half had a kick at 10-all to go ahead, we would have had to score a try to win it. And then as it started, then there was the Munster sequence that Donald described. But the noise got louder as we went down the pitch. As Kieran Fitz said, I think what he said was, gentlemen, if it's okay by you, we'll try and inject a bit of pride into our performance.
Yeah, it got distorted through time, yeah.
But it went sort of down the field, and all as you went down the field, the noise got louder and louder and louder and louder until the drop kick went over. And I've never heard that noise in kind of Lansdowne Road sort of before. And so it was a wonderful time, and just a privilege for us all to be part of it.
Great memories, and thanks for sharing them with us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the 1985 Triple Crown and Championship winning team. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving to our final Legends Award of this evening. And to introduce this award, I'd like to welcome back on stage Mr. Ian Hyland.
Last award of the evening, indeed a very special award this evening. We feel, look, recognition is so vitally important in every walk of life. These sports people we've recognised tonight, currently performing or performing in the past, certainly make the day following a win by the 1985 Triple Crown winning team, or indeed Dave or Paul, a lot easier for us to get up in the morning and do what we have to do for a living. So thank you all for what you do for us from a sporting perspective. Thank you very much indeed. This particular award, we thought long and hard about it, and it's an outstanding achievement in rugby. And there's two elements to this. Firstly is the recipient, but secondly is, the sentiment in which it's presented. And we thought there was certainly only one decision in this regard. We lost Jack Kyle, as we know, a little time ago. And Jack Kyle regardless of many years ago, Jack Kyle was arguably the greatest fly half the game of rugby has ever seen. Having inspired the Irish team to the most successful period in its history, he left the country in his 30s to become a medical missionary, working at the same hospital in Africa for more than 30 years. He won 46 caps between 1947 and 1958, plus 6 for the British Lions, and made 8 appearances for the Barbarians. And in 2002, the Irish Rugby Football Union voted him the greatest ever Irish rugby player. I don't think any of us will argue with that. Jack Kyle masterminded Ireland's golden period of rugby, where they won their first ever Grand Slam in 1948, followed by the Triple Crown in 1949 and the Home Nations Championship in 1951. And it took the country another 61 years to win the Grand Slam, as we all remember, led by Brian O'Driscoll. And Jack, then 83, was present in Cardiff on that wonderful day to share that with that particular team. I thought that in itself was the most fantastic sentiment. A man who could plausibly challenge him as the greatest fly half, Click Morgan of Wales, reckoned that Kyle was the best opponent he ever faced, a compliment returned by Kyle. And Bob Scott, the great All Black against whom Kyle scored a famous try at Dunedin on the British Lions Tour in 1950, said, of them all, there has never been, nor ever was, anyone to touch him. His friend Jimmy McCarthy said that Jack was such a pure player and such a pure person that he'd think selling a dummy was a moral sin, and he'd have to go confession the following day. Terry McLean, the New Zealand rugby journalist, wrote that Jack Kyle's football always had the air of genius about it, and a dazzling try scored against France at Ravenhill in 1953 prompted a newspaper to describe him as the Scarlet Pimpernel. We seek him here, we seek him there, that damned elusive Jackie Kyle. Well, tonight we are particularly honoured to name this award in Jack's memory. There's only one person that can present this award. If I could introduce a former UCD, Blackrock College RFC, Ireland International captain, Barbarian, British and Irish Lions flanker, International Rugby Hall of Fame inductee. Indeed, he was captain of the most successful Irish touring side ever in 1979, which won 7 of the 8 matches in Australia, and a member of the Triple Crown winning team of 1982, and most importantly, he's Austin Healy's greatest fan. Ladies and gentlemen, Fergus Lattery.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may think that I am an incurable romantic. based on some of the things I'm about to say. But the Outstanding Achievement in Rugby Award has that great name appended to it, and I personally believe it is the most appropriate name to be selected out of Irish rugby since 1874. Jack Kyle, we lost a great man, a great rugby man last year. Charlie Chaplin was followed by Fred Astaire, and Fred Astaire was followed by Jack Kyle. They all had much in common: sublime footwork and their own and unique styles whilst performing. And they all appeared in black and white. I was, and I am, too young to have ever seen them perform. I first met Jack Kyle shortly after he came back from Zambia on a train journey from Munster coming back up to Dublin, along with Noel Henderson, the late Noel Henderson. And the few hours spent with Jack, my very first, were absolutely magical. He was a gentle gentleman and remained so until the very end. I last saw him at a dinner in Belfast last year. He was visibly very frail, and his health was very definitely in decline. So I gave him my goodbye kiss that night. Caleb and Justine and the whole family, you did so much for him in the last few years. And as a friend of Jack Kyle, I would thank you for that. He was a happy camper for those last few years because of the enormity of the effort you all made on his behalf. So thank you. So a great name with Jack Kyle. And I think it's just a coincidence that the second person I'm going to say a few words about is also an Ulsterman, and that is Willie John McBride. And Willie John McBride is a big bugger. And I have to say only good things about Willie John McBride. 71 Lines tour. Willie John was one of the first times I met him was in 1969. The Irish had their very first ever squad session. And from that moment forward to this very day, Willie John has been a lifelong friend and a best friend, and I hope that continues to the very end. On the 71 Lines tour, we had a coach, and his name was Carwyn James, and he was steeped in Welsh nationalism. He was a member of Plaid Cymru, a great reader, like Jack Kyle, but his reading was directed towards the great Welsh, the Dylan Thomases of this world, and so forth. And Carwyn spoke very, very gently, no matter what he was saying, whether it was high-pitched, he always spoke very calmly and very quietly to the players in the room. In 1971, before we left what the English call Costa del Geriatricus, otherwise known as Eastbourne, we had this extraordinary meeting. Carwyn sits us down and he said, "You're going to make rugby history. You will be the first Lions side ever to go to New Zealand and win a series." And I said, "Gentlemen, I want you to do two things from this moment forward to the very end of the tour. Give 100%. And in giving that 100%, give not for yourself, but for the colleagues around you." And he said, "The tour starts now." We got up, Heathrow, bang, out to New Zealand eventually, 3.5-month tour. An amazing time. The Thursday night before we played the first test, Carwyn had us back into our team room, and every time the 30 players were in that team room, the players who were playing on the Saturday against New Zealand and the players that weren't, we were all part of the same team. And he said, "I want to remind you of what I said back in Eastbourne, that you would be the first side to win a series in New Zealand, and you are going to do that, and you will start on Saturday by beating New Zealand because you are going to win this game." And Carwyn went on, and the fact of the matter, he said, there is only one player standing between you and victory on Saturday, and that is Colin Meads. Now, for those of you who are too young to not know who Colin Meads is, he is a big bastard. And he is the rock then on what New Zealand rugby was made of. He was the absolute linchpin of that New Zealand side. And Carwyn looked around the room and he said, the only player that will stand between us and victory on Saturday is Colin Meads. And I want one of you to take him out. And the silence in the room was only broken by the odd player letting out a little bit of gas. And if it wasn't gas, it was cold perspiration, the sense of fear that somebody was going to have to take this bastard out. And Willie John, as Carwyn looked around the room, blinked consensually, and Willie did take Colin Meads out the night before the game and got him blind drunk. Well, the two boys were so shagged apparently in their dressing rooms, in their respective dressing rooms, they couldn't tie their boots. But anyway, it worked, and the Lions won that first of a Test series. In 1974, in a very different mode, we're in South Africa. This time, Willie John is our leader. He is our champion. And we're down in Port Elizabeth, and the tour is going very well. We've played 2 tests, we've won 2 tests, and the 3rd test is about to fall upon us, and victory in that will seal the series for the 74 Lions. And apparently in our hotel, in the early hours of the morning, there was an incredible rumpus. Nobody really seems to know what happened. I have to be honest to Willie John McBride and say I wasn't staying in that hotel that night. So it wasn't me. But there was a rumpus, and Dick Milliken and Bobby Windsor came out of their room to figure out and find out what the hell this racket that was going on in the corridor of their floor in the hotel was. And they came out and all they had were towels wrapped around their midriff. And they walked down the corridor, and at the same time as they were walking down the corridor, the lift opened and the night manager came through the lift. And he said, "You guys, you're behaving incredibly badly. I'm getting complaints from all the residents in this hotel from the floors above and below you. This is absolutely criminal. You've got to cut out all this messing." I said, "You guys, what have you been doing?" And of course, they were perfectly innocent. And they said they were perfectly innocent. And the manager just said, "Bullshit." He said, "I'm going to get the police." And with that, he turned on his heels and he went straight back towards the lift. And just at that moment, the lift doors opened. And who should come out of the lift? Willie John McBride, smoking the little pipe, puffing away in it, calm as bedazzles. And the manager looked at Willie John with a sigh of relief, and he explained the fracas that was going on in the hotel and that he was going to get the police. And Willie John kind of ignored him and walked by him, still puffing the pipe. And the manager got into the lift. He said, "I'm getting the police now, Mr. McBride." And Willie John tilted the head back as if to say, "Come over here to me." And the manager came out with a little smile on his face. He said, "What?" He said, "How many are you going to get?" Willie John has been a lifelong friend. He's the sort of guy who makes rugby the great game that it is today. And as a teammate, the desire to keep playing the game grows when you have friends and people like Willie John McBride around you. I would like to thank Willie John for all he has done for his teammates and the game of rugby football, and I regard the accord that he's getting tonight as absolutely appropriate. Willie John McBride, I promise you, is a great, great rugby player, both on and off the field of play. And I cannot actually decide which was the greater contribution from Willie John. Was it on the pitch or was it off the pitch? But either way, the totality of it was fantastic.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the recipient of the Jack Kyle Award, Mr. Willie John McBride.
Ladies and gentlemen, well, Caleb, ladies and gentlemen, can I just say right away that I'm terribly honoured to receive this inaugural award with Jack Kyle's name on it. Jack ended up being a very good friend of mine. I met him many years ago, and believe it or not, I did play against him once. I was a very young man, and I think it was my first year playing for Ballymena, and Jack was sort of on the way out, and he played full-back for North of Ireland one afternoon against us in Ballymena. He wouldn't have remembered it. And I didn't see Jack for many years after that. And he came down to South Africa when we were with the Lions to see the games, and I got to know him there. And then I really got to know him when he came back from Zambia. But what a great gentleman he was. We've heard all the things tonight, and it really is an honour for me to have this. I remember, and I'm sure Caleb will appreciate his presentation, I was down to see Jack just a few days before he left us, and he was a great man for Yeats. And even at that stage, he started quoting Yeats to me, and he quoted a few verses. And then he sat back and he looked at me with that glint he still had in his eye, and he says, "You know, Willie John, there's about 40 verses of this." And I shook my head. I says, "Jack, we don't have time." And he just laughed. But I'm sure Caleb will appreciate his presentation as well, and I really appreciate this. You know, Jack Kyle, he really was a wonderful man, and I remember somebody said to me, you know, what did you think of him? And I said, well, he was a gentleman, and I don't know how you describe a gentleman except by two words: Jack Kyle. He had everything that we would all want to be. He just was a great human being. And, you know, he played his rugby that way. I gather I wasn't playing. I never saw him play because it was all radio in those days. And, but I certainly knew who he was and what he had done for the Irish team. And one of the great things that I remember him saying to me when I got to know him, he said, you know, we were so lucky and we were so proud, both of us, that we played in a game and for a team that represented the whole island of Ireland. And he really meant that. And I mean it as well. Jack loved all games, but he loved the game of golf as well. And he and I were joint presidents, and he was brilliant because Jack would come, when he came back from Zambia, he would say to me, we would be invited to various things. We were involved in joint presidents of a charity called Wooden Spoon, which looks after mentally and physically and disadvantaged young people. And we would be invited to various things, and Jack would say to me, you know, I've been in Zambia for a long time, and people keep inviting me out, and I don't have to pay for my dinner. And, you know, that was just Jack. And then he would say to me, he said, you know, we're joint presidents. He said, what should we be doing? And I said, Jack, all you have to do is be here. That's all that matters. And he could never get to grips with that. He was such a modest man. But he enjoyed his golf as well. He loved his golf. And I remember one day we were playing in a club called Ballyliffin up in Donegal. And I remember we were playing there, and we had a buggy. And the two of us, as joint presidents of Wooden Spoon, we were playing for the charity. And I remember going out, and I was driving the buggy, and I remember coming down this sort of fairway, and suddenly there's a big drain or chasm. And I immediately saw it for the last minute, and I swung round to the left so that I wouldn't go bang into the middle of it, and Jack flew right out of the buggy. And I stopped, and I remember sitting there holding my head and thinking, God, I've just killed Jack Kyle. And I remember I turned round and he was standing there looking at me. And he said, that was wonderful, you know. He said, I did a complete somersault and ended up on my feet again. And Jack was at least 80 years of age at that stage. And I said, well, Jack, we won't be trying that again. But he was a great man. But I'm really delighted to have this. Can I also say that it's nice to see the 1985 Triple Crown side, or some of them again. It's 40 years now since I last played for Ireland, and you know, it frightens me how the years go by. And you know, it's lovely to be remembered like this. Just last autumn, I was down in West Cork, and I was down to see a very good friend of mine who I played for about 30-odd times with in the Irish team, Mick Malloy. And I was down with Mick, but I was in a little place one afternoon with my wife, Penny, and she was buying something, and I really wasn't all that interested. And I'm sort of looking around this shop and one thing or another. And this little man rushed in, and he ran up to me, and he caught my arm, and he shook my arm, and he looked up at me, and he says, "You used to be Willie John McBride." So it's lovely to be remembered. Can I just finish by saying this? It's lovely to be here tonight, and it's been a delight to sit with Caleb and Justine and their family, and it's also a great pleasure for me to have my wife with me tonight, Penny, and my son and my daughter-in-law, Carolyn. It's just been a lovely evening, and it's great to be part of this, and I will treasure this very much indeed. Thank you.
Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. Congratulations to all our nominees and indeed to all our award recipients. We look forward to seeing you next year. Good night.
Other award winners included Sportsperson of the Year, Katie Taylor. Team of the Year, sponsored by CityJet. The Irish Women's Rugby Team. Coach of the Year, Paul McGinley. Other legends honoured on the night, David Walsh, sports journalist. Tony Ward, rugby legend. And the GAA Warriors, DJ Carey, Mick O'Dwyer and Tony Hanaho,